Grug works very hard this season, hunts every day, trades fairly, saves what he can, earns 50 mammoth teeth this season. Same as last season. Same as season before that. Meanwhile, Grug hears about wealthy cave elder across the valley. Elder does not hunt anymore. Elder's wealth grew by 4,000 teeth this season, without Elder lifting a single rock. Grug works, earns 50. Elder sits, earns 4,000. Tribe says, this is unfair, rigged. Elder must be cheating somehow. Grug investigates. And Grug finds something more interesting than cheating. Grug finds mathematics. Today Grug explains why wealth concentrates the way it does, not through conspiracy, but through a set of compounding mechanisms. Here is the first and most important concept. Income grows linearly. Wealth grows exponentially. Grug earns income from his labor. Grug hunts one day, earns roughly fixed amount. Hunts twice as many days, earns roughly twice as much. Income scales linearly with effort and time. There is a hard ceiling on this. Grug has limited hours, limited energy, limited days in a season. No matter how hard Grug works, income from labor has a ceiling. Wealthy Elder's money does not work this way. Elder has 1 million teeth invested. At 8% return, that generates 80,000 teeth this year. Elder did nothing different from last year. Same portfolio, same effort. 0 effort, actually. Next year, if Elder reinvests, Elder has 1,080,000 teeth. At 8% return, that generates 86,400 teeth. The growth itself grows. This is compound interest again. Grug covered this before, but now applied to the wealth gap specifically. Here is the critical insight. Below a certain wealth threshold, almost all of your financial growth comes from labor income. Above a certain wealth threshold, almost all of your financial growth comes from capital, your money working. Grug calls this the crossover point. Below crossover, you work for money. Above crossover, money works for you, and eventually generates more than your labor ever could. The crossover point depends on your expenses and your portfolio return. But conceptually, once your investments generate more annual return than you could earn from a year of labor, you have crossed over. Most cave people never reach this crossover point, not because it is impossible, because almost nobody is taught this framework, and almost nobody starts early enough for compounding to do the heavy lifting. Now Grug explains the asset ownership gap. This is the single biggest structural driver of the wealth gap, and it is almost entirely about what type of assets people own. Cave people in lower wealth brackets. Their primary asset, if they have one, is typically their home and often a heavily mortgaged home. Their primary financial relationship with the economy is through labor, wages, and consumption spending. Cave people in higher wealth brackets. Significant portions of wealth held in business ownership, stocks, real estate, and other income-generating assets. Their primary financial relationship with the economy is through ownership. Here is why this distinction is so powerful. When the cave economy grows, when productivity increases, when new technology emerges, who captures that growth? Owners of productive assets capture it directly. A cave person who owns shares in companies benefits when those companies become more productive. A cave person who owns rental property benefits when rents rise with economic growth. A cave person who owns only their labor benefits only if their specific wages rise, which depends on many factors outside their control. Over the last several decades, corporate profits and asset values have grown significantly faster than median wages. This means the economic pie has been growing, but the share captured by asset owners has been growing faster than the share captured by laborers. This is not a moral judgment. It is a structural observation, and it explains a huge portion of the widening wealth gap. The cave person with 70% of net worth in stocks and real estate benefited enormously from decades of asset price growth. The cave person with 100% of net worth in labor income and a mortgaged home benefited only from wage growth, which has been slower. Same working hours, same effort, vastly different outcomes, because one group owned a piece of the growth machine and the other did not. Now Grug explains generational compounding, and this is where the gap becomes truly enormous. Wealth does not just compound within one lifetime. It compounds across generations. Grug presents two cave families. Family A. Parents have no significant assets. They work hard, raise children well, but have nothing to pass on financially. Children start at zero. Children must build everything from scratch, starting their compound interest clock at age 25 or later, often delayed further by student debt. Family B. Parents have built moderate wealth, say 500,000 teeth in assets by retirement. Children receive some inheritance, but more importantly, children grew up observing how their parents managed money. Children received help with education without debt. Children may receive help with a down payment, allowing them to buy property a decade earlier. Notice what happened in Family B. The children did not necessarily inherit huge sums, but they started their compounding clock 15 years earlier. Starting at 25 versus starting at 35 can mean hundreds of thousands of teeth difference at retirement, even with identical savings rates. Now imagine this gap repeating across generations. Family B's children, having started earlier and with less debt, build more wealth than their parents. Their children start even earlier with even more support. Each generation's starting line moves further ahead. Meanwhile, Family A's children, starting at zero with debt, take longer to reach the crossover point, if they reach it at all. Their children inherit the same starting line. This is not about effort or intelligence. A child in Family A working just as hard, just as disciplined, starts the race from much further behind with a headwind. Over multiple generations, this compounds into the wealth gaps we observe at a societal level. Grug wants to be very clear about something. This does not mean individual effort does not matter. Many cave people from Family A build substantial wealth through high savings and entrepreneurship. But starting conditions matter enormously, and pretending everyone starts the same line ignores a massive structural reality. Now Grug addresses the part of this video that matters most for you personally. Understanding why the gap exists is interesting, but what can Grug actually do about his own situation? Here Grug returns to mechanisms that are genuinely available to almost anyone. Mechanism 1. Cross the asset ownership line as early as possible, even with small amounts. The wealth gap is driven by asset ownership versus labor-only income. You do not need to be wealthy to own assets. You need to consistently direct some portion of labor income into productive assets, like index funds, starting as early as possible. Even small amounts matter because of the crossover point concept. Every tooth moved into an income-generating asset begins working for you immediately. The goal is not to become wealthy overnight. The goal is to begin the compounding process as early as possible, so that by the time you are 50 or 60, a meaningful portion of your financial life comes from capital rather than labor. Mechanism 2. Increase your savings rate, because this is the lever you control most directly. Savings rate has more influence over your eventual wealth than almost any other factor. A higher savings rate accelerates your personal crossover point. Mechanism 3. Avoid the debt traps that disproportionately affect those without family financial buffers. High-interest debt and lack of emergency funds trap cave people without family wealth as a safety net, pushing them into expensive borrowing. Building even a modest emergency fund breaks this cycle and prevents one bad month from becoming years of high-interest debt. Mechanism 4. Invest in skills and earning capacity early, since this is the foundation everything else is built on. Education and skills development remain powerful tools, particularly for those without inherited assets to start with. Mechanism 5. If you are in a position to help the next generation cross the starting line earlier, do so deliberately. Helping a child avoid debt or teaching financial concepts early shifts the starting line for the next generation. Grug calls this breaking the cycle. Wealth grows exponentially through compounding, while labor income grows linearly. The asset ownership gap is the primary driver of wealth inequality. The rich get richer because their money works while they sleep. Grug cannot change where he started. Grug can change where his money starts. Next video, Grug discovers entrepreneurship. Tribe says starting a business is too risky. Grug investigates the real risk and reward. Do not miss it.